So imagine that you're walking down the road and then all of a sudden the world starts changing around you. When it stops changing, you're in a completely different place and you have no idea what's happening. This guy in weird clothes comes up to you, grabs your arm, and you're like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm Shakespeare. You must be my new director." He drags you into a building that looks like this. He's like, "All right, I'll come back in 20 minutes with my actors. I'm so excited to see what you've got planned." And then he leaves. And you're like, "I'm directing a show in Shakespeare's theater. What am I supposed to do?" Fear not. I will teach you the basics of how to put on a play in Shakespeare's actual Globe Theater. So the first thing that's important to know is where we are. It's the year 1600 and you are standing in the Globe Theater. But you're confused because it doesn't look anything like any theater you've ever been in before. Most theaters you've been in probably look something like this, where the audience is seated and there's the stage and there's a pretty distinct separation. So the building you're standing in looks like this. So, right, nothing like the last one. So the first big difference is that it's open to the sky. That's the sky. This is the air. Everything's open. You're outside, basically. So, right, you see the seats are over here, and there aren't that many of them, right? Because a lot of your audience actually is going to be standing down here in the pit. So obviously, it's preferable to sit during a show, but of course, because those seats are more desirable, they're more expensive. So most of the people who are going to be sitting up there are going to be people who are a little bit more wealthy, or maybe some like minor aristocrats who are in the city who wanted to go see a play. Down here is everybody else who can only afford the 1 penny ticket, which is pretty cheap. So the other thing that's important to note, this is really different, is the stage itself, right? So this stage has a name. It's called a thrust stage because it's literally thrusting out from the back wall, as you can see, and it's surrounded on 3 sides instead of 1 by your audience. So there's actually going to be audience here and audience over there. Okay, so we know a little bit about the building we're in. But who are your actors going to be? So your actors are a self-owned acting company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men, who Shakespeare usually works with. They were founded about 6 years before the current day, and they're made up of entirely men. So you're like, wait, but what if I'm putting on Romeo and Juliet? Who's my Juliet going to be? And the answer is, your Juliet is going to be a man. It is illegal in Elizabethan England for women to be on stage. So all female parts are usually played by young men or boys. The key is that they don't have a beard yet, right? And their voice has not dropped too low. So even if you think it's weird, your audience won't. So that's what you need to do. And then you're like, okay, well, I have actors, but what are they going to wear? And then you panic at the thought of like having to go into London and find someone to make costumes. But you don't have to worry about it because like any other good acting company at the time, Lord Chamberlain's Men have their own costume wardrobe. They like having really high quality costumes. So what most theaters do is that they buy clothing from aristocrats or nobles in the city. So they have really fancy clothes. They have a wardrobe. They'll pull what they want. Even if you're putting on a historical play like Julius Caesar, you cast them, they'd be wearing like the current clothing of the day. So Caesar is a senator, so like the equivalent rank might be like a duke or something. So he would be wearing clothing in the Elizabethan equivalent of his rank. So you're pretty much all set. You don't have to worry about it. So you're starting to relax a little. You're like, okay, I know what's happening. But then you think about every play you've ever seen in the 21st century. And you're like, oh my God, giant lights. And that time I went to the Nutcracker and saw the expanding tree. You don't have to worry about any of it because electricity hasn't been invented yet. It's only 1600, right? And actually, like we said, as for lighting, you're outside. So whatever's coming in from the sky is what you got. And that's what your audience is going to expect. So you're in the clear. As for set pieces, we can't have the expanding tree because, it's only 1600. But even so, set pieces aren't a big part of performance on a thrust stage. And the reason for that is because it sort of blocks everyone's vision. So this is like being in the Globe, right? You can see this guy here. His view of this actor is already a little bit compromised by this column. The actor moves behind the column, he's not going to see him. So you can only imagine with all of these people, if there were set pieces here or out there or here, all it would do is just block everyone's vision of the action. And that's not what they want, right? So there might be like a table or a bench that the actors can bring on and off, but that's it. So you pretty much don't have to worry about it. So, okay, I see Shakespeare coming back with Richard Burbage, and you're going to get to direct a show. Oh my God, now you know all the right things. You are totally ready. Okay, so as much as I might like for this to happen to me, the likelihood of you at Revolution Prep or me being dropped into Elizabethan England and being asked to direct a show is pretty low. But this kind of mental exercise is actually something that's really useful, and this is the kind of thing that people who study performance history or people who study Shakespeare's plays do all the time, because you can learn a lot from this, even if you would never actually do it. So if you're reading the play and want to understand a little bit more about it, this would be a helpful way to try to think about it. Or if you're trying to write a paper about a play, or if you're even putting on a Shakespearean play in the modern context, there are a lot of things that you can learn from thinking about it like this, and it'll give you a deeper understanding of how these plays were originally meant to be performed. All right, thanks so much, Revolution Prep.